Chop and brew, 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 chop and brew.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 50th episode of Chop and Brew. I am your host, Chip Walton. In this episode, we are deconstructing a dessert for an inspired homebrew. The dessert in question, a king cake, which is a staple of Mardi Gras celebrations across the Gulf Coast and beyond during Carnival season. Right along as I devise a recipe for a king cake ale and join the one and only Don O in his backyard for a few half pints and tasting notes. But real quick before we get into the meat of the episode, I do want to say, as I mentioned, it's the 50th episode of Chop and Brew. 4 years ago, I stood in pretty much this exact same spot of my kitchen and launched the show with the mission statement, with the goal, with the purpose of continuing the videos of homebrewing and home cooking. They don't come out as frequently as I wish because of day jobs and other real life things, but I feel like 50 episodes in 4 years is a pretty good clip. We're definitely going to work on that in the coming months and year, doing more videos. But I want to give a shout out to the fans all over the world, all over the country, all over the Twin Cities. You know, it's awesome. People email, social media, contact us all the time, tell us that they enter contests under the Chop and Brew flag, or that they try beer recipes or Mummers and Elsa's pie crust recipe for the first time, and it really warms my heart to see the inspiration and the influence that the show has had. Big shout out to every fan, every subscriber, especially you folks with the recurring donations, without which the show couldn't go on. I had to replace his camera earlier this year. Couldn't have happened without you guys. So if you haven't ever looked into that option, go to chopandbrew.com and join us. You know, get some merch, support the show. The other thing, one reason for the lack of frequency over the summer, I did a lot of work with the BJCP, getting their YouTube page filled with videos from HomebrewCon and beyond. So whether you're in the BJCP or not, the information there is awesome. So they're basically like Chop and Brew episodes. So go check that out. That's at youtube.com/BJCP video. All kinds of topics, from techniques to history to judging topics. And then also a side note, this episode's about king cake, another really popular Mardi Gras dessert, or dinner as it were, is the moon pie. You could check out a fun song that I recorded called the Moon Pie Song on my personal YouTube page, where I stick a lot of music and other things with Charlie P or whatever. That's at youtube.com/TexAbamaBrackish. So man, I could go on and on about the 50th episode. It's so cool. Fan art. Maybe we'll do a whole episode just on some of the fan art and fan love that we've gotten. But let's just get on with the episode. So until we celebrate the 100th episode of Chop and Brew, chop for chop, brew for brew, let them drink cake! As I promised, I'm sitting at Dono's picnic table at Dono's backyard. Actually, we took his picnic table to someone else's backyard. Isn't that crazy? Dono, Midway St. Paul.
Cheers.
Warm summer night. This is the king cake ale. So as briefly explained ahead of time, this is a beer basically to pay tribute to a king cake. And what is a king cake? If you grew up on the Gulf Coast like I did in Mobile, Alabama, or if you're in New Orleans, basically king cake is, I might be speaking out of turn, but I would call it the official dessert of Mardi Gras. King cakes are these like round circular cakes. Are essentially kind of like a giant cinnamon roll. They're always frosted in a wonderful array of purple, yellow, and green frosting or grain sugar topping, purple, green, and yellow being the official colors of Mardi Gras. So it's this cake that'll start showing up at like office parties and school and your house during Carnival season, during the 2 or 3 weeks of Mardi Gras. And the legend has it, if you get the slice with the baby in it, there's a little plastic baby hidden in this cake, you have to buy the king cake for the next year or the next party. So essentially what we're doing here is we're brewing a beer to emulate a dessert for an awesome holiday and festival and reason to party and drink and eat cake. But I didn't want to go the insane route and mash with a king cake, which during my research I found out that there's at least 2 breweries that do that. Straight up throw these like giant rings of cinnamon cake into their mash, which is, seems completely legit as far as a modern day scale of how people are brewing. But I just wanted something that actually emulated those qualities. So I asked myself, what is a king cake? First of all, it's a pastry. It's kind of buttery. It's definitely got cinnamon. It usually has kind of like a citrus element, lemon peel, lemon juice. Sometimes they've got almond extract almost in them. Sometimes vanilla. So we're basically trying to make a beer that's still kind of chewy, bready. You can imagine yeasty. I reached out to all of my peoples, and Drew Beecham and my good friend Dan Murphy, who used to brew at a place called Fairhope Brewing Company down on the Gulf Coast in Alabama. What I did is I basically built a recipe from advice from the 2 of them. And the first thing being first is Drew Beecham was like, well, you don't want it to be bone dry. You want it to be super clean. So let's kind of think English golden, and let's make sure that it doesn't flock completely clear. We want it to be a little buttery, but not diacetyl-y, you know what I mean? We want body. We want a little bit of dough kind of element. So, and then of course we thought about cinnamon. And then lemon. So in that mixture we came up with a recipe that was Barca Pils for the most part, which is a toastier side of Pils malt, flaked wheat for a little bit of body, a little bit of cloudiness, a little bit of that kind of buttery, fatty sensation, golden naked oats, and aromatic malt. Bittered this mofo with Hallertau, because what screams French Gulf Coast like German Hallertau hops? I think it really could have been anything. But then I used a really cool hop called Lemon Drop. I got an experimental satchel of these from Summit's head brewer Damo. And as you would imagine, they're very lemony is their tasting note from front to back. Lemon zest, lemon peel, citrus. So we brewed. It was a brew in a bag. Easy peasy. The way I like to do it, stovetop. Put it on my brew in a bag grill in order to kind of drain it and to do a little hand sparging. Boiled it Hallertau, and then the lemon drops went in, and then to even kind of up that lemoniness, there was organic lemon peel also from the treasure trove of Damo at work. So you kind of have this double punch of lemon influence, and then about a tablespoon of cinnamon went in about 5 minutes. Again, came out about, I think it was about 10:55-ish maybe. Not a super strong beer, we just wanted a beer. For full disclosure, I was actually supposed to brew this on Mardi Gras last year, or before Mardi Gras. Chip Walton never really gets scheduled very well, so I brewed this more like May. So the idea is we're now tasting it, and we'll remind you next Mardi Gras to brew it. But the point being, I don't know what the I'm doing here. This is crazy.
So you brewed it?
I brewed it.
You fermented it?
I fermented it with the London ESB ale. The idea is we want something that's not going to drop completely clear, that's going to leave a little residual body, a little bit of sweetness, almost a little bit of kind of butteriness. The cinnamon was just Penzeys cinnamon blend. After the fact, I realized I have this Vietnamese cinnamon blend from Penzeys that actually kind of comes off like vanilla. As well as cinnamon. So next time if I were ever to do this, I would use that because it kind of gives it that vanilla thing without throwing like vanilla beans in secondary or any other thing. So I rushed this along, didn't want to do secondary, and now it's about 3 months old.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, which is fine. It's just been sitting. If anything, it's actually gotten clear. It was definitely more of a... It looked a little hef-like in its young days. So it's cleared a little bit without being really clear. Tasting notes with Don O. What do you think, Don O?
It's
It's that good.
I did have a sample of it from you a month ago, or probably fairly soon after it was maybe first packaged, and I remember the lemoniness, as you say, being stronger and more pronounced, and that has mellowed a little bit, probably for the better. It was a little bit, I won't say too lemony, but it was definitely the main thing you noticed. Now you taste more of the malt. You kind of get a sensation of the little bit of the other grains, the flaked wheat, the golden oats. The other thing is the cinnamon. I think now that you've talked about it and now that it's gotten a little bit warmer, I do get a little bit of a cinnamon note. I'm not generally a fan of English yeast, but I think that in a beer like this, it can work. I think it does add another flavor that is a flavor that I normally am not trying to get in my beers when I'm trying to do more hop focused beers, or if I'm doing even a darker beer. I don't want that English ale flavor, but in a medium gravity beer with all of these other experiments, I think that it just adds another element of flavor that can work.
Yeah, I agree. I usually wouldn't brew with that just because, I mean, I would want to if I was brewing a style that really calls for that. But for the most part, English isn't my thing. But when Drew Beecham was like, yeah, we want to keep it kind of round. You know, the idea is it's mimicking a pastry that you eat, and it's got butter in it. It's got this flakiness to it, this kind of like break apart cinnamon roll. You know, sometimes they fill these things with like jellies and puddings and stuff. But for the most part, it's kind of a dryish bread, but it's still, you know, it's fatty. It's got butter. It's a pastry of French origin, or neo-French origin.
And it's either.
I agree. The lemon dropping out is good. Early on, it was a little too pledgy. It was a little. You felt like you were getting bitterness from the lemon peel as opposed to just bitterness maybe from the lemon drop hop. And now I feel like it's more of like, oh, it's an English beer. The idea is just brewing, once again, being inspired by something like a food and trying to emulate it without actually putting that thing in your beer. I mean, if you were to mash with king cake, I don't know how that would go because it's got artificial coloring it's got food coloring in the frosting. It's got frosting, which have a whole other kind of world of fats in them. I just really can't imagine mashing with a king cake, but it'd be cool to hear how those two breweries that do it down south, what that experience is like.
Speaking of the cake element of it, I guess I don't.
Cake.
I think I've had a
yellow
cake.
cake.
I think I've had a part of the king cake at one point, but I think it could even be a tiny bit sweeter. I don't know if that would be from a slightly higher final gravity, or what else you would do to get that effect. But if I'm thinking of cake and sugar and sweetness, it could, because there is a bitterness from the hops, the lemon peel, the cinnamon is a spicy,
earthy
light
bitterness,
spicy character, and I think it could even have a tiny bit more sweetness.
Cool. Yeah, it was a trip. I grew up way up north in Illinois, and we moved to Alabama and before I was in 5th grade, and just I did not know what Mardi Gras was at all, like let alone as like Brazil or the religious aspect of it or anything. And then all of a sudden we're just like getting out of school for like a Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday to go. Yeah, they get Fat Tuesday off, they get the Monday before, and then they get the Wednesday after off because all the teachers have gone out Tuesday and got crunk.
We don't do that
up here. You get President's Day. Down there they're like, no presidents. We're gonna move this a month later, and we're going to take it off for Mardi Gras. So it's a really cool thing. A BTV that never came to light was I went down in 2012. My friend Dan Murphy, who I referred to, he and his wife actually had a king cake homebrew party, and everybody brought a king cake, and that's where I learned that like, a king cake isn't just this one version. There was stuff that was like cream cheese frosted, and there was stuff that was filled, and it was a table full. Maybe we'll pull some video out. It's literally on a tape. That's how old it is. But I did that as a brewing TV, and it just never came to fruition. But my friend Dan brewed like 4 or 5 homebrews to have on tap, and everybody's supposed to do their favorite king cake homebrew pairing. So if nothing else, it's just a vehicle for celebration during a certain part of year. So hopefully people will brew their own king cake ale next year, no matter what part of the country you live in, no matter what religion you are, because Mardi Gras is really tied into Easter, but it's really just tied into partying.
It's the end of Lent, or the beginning of Lent.
Right, yeah. Fat Tuesday's the day where you get to do all the things that you're not going to get to do for the next 40 days, apparently. But yeah, I'll be brewing this. I'm going to also brew a Russian Imperial Stout coming up here soon. that is Mardi Gras themed, based on some suggestions from my boy Dan Murphy. So that'll be another episode coming up with a great story. But we'll brew that now and probably age it until about real Mardi Gras in 2017. So that'll be the bomb. Shout out to Drew Beecham, always a mentor, an icon of sorts, and a goofy friend. He's always willing to kind of like have that conversation. So contact him if you've got some wacky ideas and want to figure out how to make them come to fruition. Big shout out to Dan Murphy, home brewer. Once again, he's no longer a pro brewer. He's just a lowly home brewer like the rest of us, but he's got a lot of great advice from the pro side and home brewing side. And shout out to Don. Oh,
Cheers.
cheers, man. Chop for chop.
Brew for brew.
Man, let's go.
Outro.
Take me down to the boom boom. That's what they call the parades in Mobile. They call them the boom boom.
That's what she called it too.
The boom boom's gonna roll at 7 tonight. The parade's rolling. The mystics of time. Let me hear you real quick.
Testing. On the mic. Get on the mic. Mike, get on the mic.
Get on
See what we can do. 3 MCs and 1 DJ.
Oh yeah. Do you want any more?
Sure. Don't ask dumb questions.
Midway Motorcycle Club.
Got some insects up here.
Incest.
No.
All right, maybe we should
Cheese
just do
and
the
rice.
taste. Maybe we should just do
Maybe
the
we
tasting
shouldn't
notes.
drink more.
Yeah. What do they call? What do they say when they're like, what the hell? I'm telling you everything that I know, all the facts. I dropped it. Full disclosure.
Oh.
For
okay.
full disclosure, I would drink this with some jambalaya, with some etouffee. Wrap.
Wrap it up.
You want some sour cherry cider, my man? Yeah, man. Brewing inspired by desserts.
I like it. Creativity.